She whispered, "I'm not pretty." The cowboy said, "That's okay. I want honest, not fancy." The town of Dry Creek was small, quiet, and full of dust. The wind never seemed to rest. It carried sand through the streets and made old wooden signs creak all day long. People there lived simple lives, they knew each other, and they did not trust strangers easily. One late afternoon, a cowboy rode into town. His name was Caleb Hayes. His hat was worn, his boots were covered in dust, and his face looked tired from long travel. He was not the kind of man who talked much. He noticed things more than he spoke about them. Caleb slowly rode his horse down the main street. A few people looked at him from the saloon. Some watched from windows. No one greeted him. That was normal in Dry Creek. He tied his horse near the general store. The wooden door made a soft sound as he pushed it open and walked inside. The store smelled like flour, wood, and old cloth. Behind the counter stood a young woman. She did not look up right away. She was arranging small items carefully, like she did not want to make any mistake. Her movements were slow and quiet. Caleb waited. After a moment, she finally looked up. Her name was Eliza. She had simple clothes, tied-back hair, and a soft face that carried no expression. Her eyes quickly dropped again, as if she did not want to be seen for too long. "Yes?" she asked quietly. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper. Caleb took a step closer to the counter. "I need some supplies," he said. His voice was calm and steady. Eliza nodded and began collecting the items he asked for. She did not speak much. She did not smile either. She just did her work. Caleb watched her, not in a rude way, but with quiet curiosity. There was something different about her. She did not move like other people. She seemed careful, like she was always trying not to be noticed. When she handed him the supplies, her fingers slightly shook. "Anything else?" she asked, still not looking at him directly. Caleb paused for a moment. "No," he said, but he did not leave right away. For a second, it felt like he wanted to say something more, but he didn't. He paid, nodded once, and walked out. Outside, the wind blew harder. Caleb stood beside his horse, but his mind stayed inside the store. That quiet girl, Eliza. There was something about her silence that stayed with him. That evening, Caleb went to the saloon. The place was louder than the rest of the town. Men laughed, glasses clinked, and music played softly in the corner. Caleb sat alone and ordered a drink. He listened more than he spoke. At a nearby table, a group of men were talking. "Did you see the new cowboy?" one of them said. "Yeah," another replied. "Quiet type." Then someone laughed. "Bet he already met Eliza at the store." A few men chuckled. "Poor girl," one said. "She's nice, but, well, you know." "Not much to look at," another added. "Plain as dust," someone joked. More laughter followed. Caleb did not laugh. He kept his eyes on his drink, but he was listening carefully. The way they spoke about her, it did not sit right with him. They were not being cruel in a loud way, but their words carried something worse. Quiet judgment, like they had already decided her worth. Caleb finished his drink slowly. He stood up and left without saying a word. The next morning, the sun rose bright, but the wind was still strong. Caleb found himself walking back to the general store. He told himself he needed more supplies, but deep down, he knew that was not the only reason. When he entered, Eliza was there again. Same quiet movements, same careful hands. She looked up, a little surprised to see him again. "You came back," she said softly. "Forgot a few things," Caleb replied. That was not fully true. She nodded and began helping him again. This time the silence felt different. Not uncomfortable, just quiet. Caleb spoke first. "You always this busy?" he asked. Eliza paused for a second. "Most days," she said. Her voice was still soft, but a little more steady this time. Caleb gave a small nod. He noticed something again. She never looked at him for long, like she believed she should not, like she had learned to stay small. When she handed him the items, their eyes met for a brief moment. She quickly looked away. But in that 1 second, Caleb saw something. Not weakness, not plainness. Something else. Something honest. Outside, Caleb stood still for a while. The wind moved around him, but he did not seem to notice. There was something about Eliza that the town did not see. Or maybe, something they chose not to see. And for the first time since arriving in Dry Creek, Caleb felt like staying a little longer. The days in Dry Creek passed slowly. But for Caleb, something had changed. He kept finding reasons to visit the general store. Sometimes he needed rope, sometimes flour, sometimes nothing at all. Still, he went. Each time, Eliza was there. At first, their talks were short and careful. She spoke only what was needed. Caleb did not push. He let the silence sit between them, calm and easy. But little by little, things began to change. One morning, Caleb walked in and found Eliza struggling to lift a heavy sack of grain. She tried to drag it across the floor, but it was too heavy. Without a word, Caleb stepped forward. "I got it," he said. She quickly stepped back. "No, it's all right. I can manage." But she couldn't. Caleb lifted the sack with ease and placed it behind the counter. Eliza looked at him, surprised. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You don't have to do everything alone," Caleb replied. She didn't answer that, but something in her expression shifted. Just a little. As the days went on, Caleb started asking simple questions. "How long you been here?" "Since I was a child," Eliza answered one afternoon. "Family?" She paused. "Not anymore," she said. Her voice stayed calm, but her eyes dropped. Caleb didn't ask more. He understood that some answers did not need more questions. One evening, the store was empty. The sun was low, and the golden light came through the dusty windows. Eliza was counting coins behind the counter. Caleb stood nearby, waiting. The quiet stretched between them. Then, suddenly, Eliza spoke. "I don't understand something," she said. Caleb looked at her. "What's that?" She hesitated. Her fingers tightened slightly around the coins. "Why do you keep coming here?" The question was simple, but it carried weight. Caleb leaned slightly on the counter. "Because I need things," he said. Eliza gave a small shake of her head. "That's not the real reason." For the first time, she looked directly at him. There was no fear in her eyes this time, just quiet honesty. Caleb did not answer right away. He thought for a moment. Then he spoke. "I like the quiet here," he said. Eliza looked confused. "Quiet?" "Yeah," Caleb said. "Not everything needs noise." She stared at him for a second, as if trying to understand his meaning. Then her eyes softened. A few days later, something changed. It was a busy afternoon. A few customers were inside the store. Some men from the ranch stood near the door, talking loudly. Eliza moved quickly, trying to serve everyone. One of the men watched her for a moment and smirked. "You always this serious, Eliza?" he said. She didn't respond. "Or is smiling too much work?" another man joked. A few people laughed. Eliza kept working, her face still, her hands slightly shaking. Caleb was there. He saw everything. He stepped closer to the counter, his presence quiet but strong. The men noticed him but said nothing more. Still, the damage was done. The laughter faded, but the feeling stayed. Later that evening, the store was empty again. Eliza stood near the shelves, placing items back in order. Caleb remained by the counter. The silence was heavier this time. After a long pause, Eliza spoke again. Her voice was softer than usual. "I'm not pretty." The words came out slowly. Not like a question, not like a complaint. Just a fact. Caleb looked at her. She was not looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. "I know that," she continued. "People don't say it to be cruel, it's just true." There was no anger in her voice. That made it even heavier. Caleb took a step forward. He did not rush his answer. He spoke calmly, like always. "That's all right." Eliza looked up, surprised. Caleb continued, "I ain't looking for fancy." She blinked, confused. "I want honest," he said. The words were simple, but they landed deep. Eliza stared at him. No one had ever said something like that to her. No false kindness, no empty compliments, just truth. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Her eyes softened again, but this time, something else appeared. Something new. Maybe hope. But outside the store, the town was watching. People noticed Caleb's visits. They talked. At the saloon, the same men laughed again. "That cowboy's got strange taste," one said. "Or maybe he's just lonely," another replied. More laughter followed. This time, Caleb heard it again. But now, it meant something more. The next day, when Caleb returned to the store, something felt different. Eliza was quieter than usual, more distant. She avoided looking at him. When he tried to speak, she kept her answers short. Something had changed. Finally, Caleb asked, "Everything all right?" Eliza shook her head slightly. "You shouldn't come here so often," she said. Caleb frowned. Why not? She hesitated. Then she spoke. People are talking. Caleb didn't seem surprised. People always talk, he said. Eliza looked at him, her expression serious. Yes, she said. But this time, it's about you. There was a pause. Then she added, very softly, and me. Caleb stood still. The wind outside grew stronger. Inside, the silence returned. But now, it carried something heavier. Something that was only just beginning. The air in Dry Creek felt different now. The wind still blew dust through the streets, but something else moved with it. Whispers. People were talking more than before. And most of it was about Caleb and Eliza. Caleb did not stop going to the general store. If anything, he went more often. But now, every step he took into town felt watched. Men at the saloon would go quiet when he entered. Some would smirk. Others would shake their heads. Caleb ignored them. He had lived long enough to know that not every voice deserved an answer. Inside the store, things were not the same either. Eliza kept her distance. She still did her work well, still spoke softly. But something had changed. She no longer stayed to talk. She no longer asked questions. And she never looked at Caleb for more than a second. One afternoon, Caleb entered the store and found it crowded. A few ranch hands stood near the counter. Among them was the same man who had joked about Eliza before, a tall, loud man named Briggs. Briggs leaned against the counter, smiling in a way that did not feel kind. Eliza stood on the other side, trying to finish the orders quickly. Her hands moved fast, but her eyes stayed low. Take your time, Eliza, Briggs said, his voice full of mock kindness. Wouldn't want you to make a mistake now. Some of the men laughed. Eliza said nothing. Caleb stepped closer, his boots heavy against the wooden floor. Briggs noticed him and raised an eyebrow. Well, look who's here, he said. The quiet cowboy. Caleb did not respond. He stood beside the counter, calm and steady. Briggs looked between Caleb and Eliza, then smirked. You sure you're in the right place? He said. Or did you come back for more supplies? The men laughed again. This time it was louder. Eliza's hands stopped moving for a second. She felt the eyes on her, felt the weight of their words. Caleb's expression did not change, but his voice, when he spoke, was firm. Get what you came for and leave, he said. The room went quiet. Briggs straightened up. You telling me what to do? He asked. Caleb met his eyes. No, he said calmly. Just saying what needs to be said. There was no anger in his voice, but there was strength. Briggs studied him for a moment. Then he gave a short laugh. Not worth the trouble, he muttered. He grabbed his things and walked out, followed by the others. The door slammed shut behind them. Silence filled the store. Eliza stood still, her hands resting on the counter. Caleb turned toward her. You all right? He asked. She nodded quickly. Yes, but her voice was not steady. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, Eliza stepped outside the store. She saw Caleb standing near his horse. The sky was painted in soft orange and gold. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Eliza walked toward him. You shouldn't have done that, she said quietly. Caleb looked at her. They were out of line, he replied. Eliza shook her head. That's not new, she said. People have always talked like that. Caleb frowned slightly. That doesn't make it right. Eliza looked away. It doesn't matter, she said. It does, Caleb answered. She turned back to him. Her eyes held something deeper now. Fear, but also frustration. No, she said softly. It doesn't. Not for me. Caleb stayed silent. Eliza took a breath. You don't understand, she continued. I've lived here my whole life. I know how people see me. She paused. And I learned to accept it. The words were calm, but they carried years of quiet pain. Caleb stepped closer. You don't have to accept it, he said. Eliza gave a small, sad smile. That's easy for you to say. There was a long pause. The wind moved between them. Then Eliza spoke again. You should leave, Caleb. He looked at her, surprised. Why? Because this town, it won't change, she said. And if you stay, they'll keep talking. They'll keep pushing. She hesitated. And it'll be because of me. Caleb shook his head. That ain't a reason to leave. It is, she said. Her voice was stronger now. I don't want to be the reason you lose work. Or respect. Caleb's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. It ain't trouble to stand by what's right, he said. Eliza looked at him, her expression breaking slightly. "And it sure ain't trouble to stand by you," he added. The words hung in the air. Simple, honest, strong. Eliza felt something shift inside her, but with it came fear. Fear of hope. Fear of believing something different. She stepped back. "You don't know me," she said quietly. Caleb gave a small nod. "Maybe not," he said. "But I know what I see." Eliza shook her head again. "That's the problem," she whispered. She turned and walked away before he could answer. That night, the town felt colder. The saloon was loud again, but Caleb did not go inside. He stood outside, looking down the empty street. For the first time, he felt the weight of staying. Not because of the town, but because of her. And inside the small room above the store, Eliza sat alone. She stared at her reflection in a small mirror. For years she had believed one thing about herself. She had accepted it, lived by it. But now, someone had spoken something different, and she did not know what to do with it. In the quiet of the night, two people in the same town faced the same question. Was it easier to stay the same, or risk believing something new? The next morning, Dry Creek looked the same as always. Dust moved through the streets. The wind pushed against doors and windows. People went about their usual work. But for Eliza, everything felt different. She stood behind the counter in the general store, holding a small piece of cloth in her hands. She had been folding it for several minutes, but her mind was somewhere else. She kept thinking about Caleb's words. "I want honest." No one had ever said something like that to her before. All her life, she had believed what others believed. That she was plain, that she should stay quiet, that she should not expect much. It was easier that way. Safer. But now, something inside her was changing, and that change felt both warm and frightening. Outside, Caleb was preparing to leave. His horse was ready. His bag was tied. His work in Dry Creek was done. He stood still for a moment, looking down the empty road ahead. He had stayed longer than planned. For the first time in a long while, leaving did not feel simple. His eyes moved toward the general store. Then he looked away again. Caleb was not a man who forced things. He had said what he believed. Now, the rest was not his choice to make. Inside the store, Eliza suddenly placed the cloth down. Her hands stopped moving. Her heart beat faster. She looked toward the door. For years, she had stayed behind that counter. Safe, quiet, hidden. But now, a question stood in front of her. Stay the same, or step forward. Without thinking too much, Eliza moved. She walked out from behind the counter. Each step felt heavy at first. The door opened with a soft creak as she stepped outside. The sunlight felt bright. The wind touched her face. She looked down the street, and there he was, Caleb, standing beside his horse, ready to leave. For a moment, Eliza froze. Fear tried to pull her back. What if this is a mistake? What if nothing changes? But then she remembered something else. The way Caleb looked at her. Not with pity, not with judgment. Just clearly. Caleb placed his foot in the stirrup, about to climb onto his horse. Then he heard something. Footsteps. He turned. Eliza was walking toward him. Not running, not rushing, just walking. Slow, but certain. Caleb stepped back down. He watched her carefully. She stopped a few steps away from him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind moved between them, carrying dust across the ground. Eliza took a small breath. Her voice, when she spoke, was still soft, but it was stronger than before. "I've been thinking," she said. Caleb nodded slightly. He waited. "You said you want honest," she continued. He looked at her, calm as always. "I meant that," he said. Eliza swallowed lightly. "I don't know how to be anything else," she said. A small pause followed. Then she added, "But I also don't know how to believe what you see." Her words were simple, but they were real. Caleb took a step closer. "You don't have to figure it all out today," he said. Eliza looked at him. There was no pressure in his voice, no demand, just patience. Another moment passed. Then Eliza spoke again. "Are you leaving?" she asked. "Yes," Caleb answered. He did not hide it. Eliza nodded slowly. She looked down for a second, then back up. "And if I ask to come with you?" she said quietly. Caleb did not look surprised. He only asked one thing. "Is that what you want?" That question stayed in the air. Simple, but important. For the first time in her life, someone was not deciding for her, not judging her, not telling her where she belonged, just asking. Eliza felt her chest tighten, not from fear this time, from something else. Choice. She looked back at the town. the same streets, the same people, the same life she had always known. Then she looked at Caleb. Not a promise, not a perfect future, but something real, something honest. She took a step forward. Yes, she said. Her voice was quiet, but sure. Caleb gave a small nod. That was enough. He did not smile big. He did not say anything grand. He simply reached for his horse. Eliza walked beside him, not behind, not hiding, beside. As they began to move down the dusty road, the town slowly faded behind them. The wind still blew. The world ahead was still unknown, but something had changed. Eliza walked with her head a little higher, her steps a little stronger. She was still the same person, still quiet, still simple, but no longer small. And Caleb? He rode beside her, just as steady as always. He had not tried to change her. He had only seen her clearly, and stayed. The road stretched ahead, long and open. No one knew where it would lead, but for the first time, Eliza did not feel like she had to hide from it, because sometimes being seen for who you truly are is more powerful than being called beautiful.